Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you are in the world. I'm Alex Freeman, the Director of Membership and Special Projects at the NMC, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the NMC Horizon 2015 Library Edition release. The NMC is an international community of experts in educational technology, from the practitioners who work with new technologies on campuses and libraries every day, to the visionaries who are shaping the future of learning at think tanks, labs, and research centers, to its staff and board of directors, to the expert panels and others helping the NMC conduct cutting-edge research. You can learn more about and formally join the NMC at www.nmc.org. During the next 90 minutes, we'll provide an overview of the 18 topics featured in this year's report, followed by a panel discussion moderated by Larry Johnson, CEO of the NMC. Larry and the report's co-principal investigators will share their insights into key themes that will impact teaching and learning in academic and research libraries over the next year to 5 years. I'm very pleased that you're participating in our virtual event today and hope that it is an enriching learning experience for you. This program is live and will be recorded for future access. If you tweet, our unique hashtag is NMCHZ. That's hashtag NMCHZ. And it will connect you to our global conversation about the NMC Horizon project. And now, on with the show. It's my pleasure to introduce Samantha Becker, the director of the Horizon project. Please welcome Samantha.
Hi guys, it's a major pleasure for me to be here today. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who was involved in the NMC Horizon Report 2015 Library Edition, from our co-principal investigators to our amazing expert panel. You guys make it happen, and I can't wait to dive into the results with you. So I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation we put together that's going to provide a little bit of an overview about the report. There's 18 topics, so you know, we may just be able to scratch the surface on some of them. So I highly encourage all of you to download the report at the link right here on the slide. Let's go ahead and all test our internet bandwidth right now and download the report if we haven't already. The NMC Horizon Report 2015 Library Edition was, of course, produced by the NMC. Alex gave a nice overview of the NMC and who we are. I encourage you to check us out on our website. This presentation is really exciting. We're going to talk a little bit about the project, some of the key trends that are accelerating tech adoption, the obstacles that are standing in the way, and, of course, the important developments in technology. As Alex mentioned, if you're a tweeter, and I hope you are, we hope to see you on Twitter at hashtag NMCHZ, and you can tweet directly at us at NMCORG. For those of you who are new to the NMC Horizon project, you know, just with this library edition, you may not know that we have well over 50 editions now of the NMC Horizon project, and just some of them are up here on the screen. Our reports have been translated over 60 times. And the project itself was launched in 2002, so as far as we know, this is the longest standing study into emerging technology uptake. We are truly global in scope and reach. You can see here from the map, this is just our last 10,000 downloads, and we get over 11,000 downloads per day, and approaching over 4 million downloads annually. And actually, 1.5 plus million of those downloads were from last year's inaugural library report. So we look forward to seeing how the 2015 edition fares. Of course, gotta give praise where it's due. Thank you so much to the supporting libraries and organizations who sponsored the report. You guys made the work possible. We have representatives from each of these libraries and organizations today, so you'll be hearing more from them. But a huge standing ovation, a virtual standing ovation for these guys. Thank you so much. A little bit of background about the report. For those of you interested in the topics and where we came up with them, well, actually, it wasn't just the NMC staff or co-PIs. In fact, for every edition of the Horizon Report, we convene an expert panel. And this expert panel is international. We had 50 plus folks from over 15 countries for this year's report. And this is just a screenshot of just a little bit of the activity and conversations on the wiki. So we set up this online collaborative workspace, a wiki space, and we seed it with all kinds of prompts, the latest research. And for about a month and a half, this expert panel engages in a hearty discourse about the key trends, significant challenges, and developments in technology that are impacting them and their libraries. And also, they have the benefit as change makers and innovators to be able to take a 5-year view and really look into the horizon and see what's out there. So at the end of this discourse, we populate a voting tool with all the topics, even though there's 18 topics in the report, and that's a lot. The panelists start out with 60+ topics, and ultimately they narrow it down with their voting, and we get to the 18 topics that we're going to be talking about here today. So over to you, Alex, to talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing.
Thank you, Sam. So as she mentioned, there's 3 different areas of the report: trends, challenges, and the tech topics. When we look at the trends and challenges, we kind of look at them over 3 dimensions. For the trends, we look at kind of the duration of their impact within educational settings. So whether it's a short term, whether it's something that's really the buzz right now, and that will decrease over time, or you have things that we've been talking about for a while that are trends that will continue to be trends into the midterm, and then these long-term trends are really larger ideas that will take a long time before they kind of work their way through the system and either become a main part of what libraries do, or the conversation begins to change. So for this year's report, we also added 3 sections, as we did last year, on policy, leadership, and practice. So for each trend that we approached, we have a section that's particularly dedicated to a different audience. So if you're a policymaker, you could look to that one paragraph and kind of get a sense of what governments and federal agencies are doing to address this challenge. In terms of leadership, if it's library administration or those at a higher level doing strategic planning, leadership paragraph is very helpful. And then when it comes to practice, it's those that are actually working in the trenches, working on these particular topics and the projects that they're working on in that area. We have 6 trends, key trends, that made it into this year's report along those 3 different timelines: the long-term impact, midterm, and short-term. I'm just going to focus on a couple of these so that we can keep it moving along. One of the things that we see a lot within higher ed, and especially within libraries and even museums, is the idea of rethinking the library spaces, or rethinking the environment where learning is happening. That's happening across multiple disciplines. It's a long-term and widespread emphasis on rethinking physical spaces, and it's expanding the benefits for on-campus libraries. So how can the rearrangement of space help for learning? In the past several years, libraries have been moving a large amount of their print collections to off-site storage centers as they have transitioned to more digital offerings in the form of ebooks and online journals. As such, libraries are reimagining how they can best use that extra room. The University at Colorado, for example, at Colorado Springs Kramer Family Library, recently traded in the shelving that once encompassed print materials to create flexible learning spaces for patrons to facilitate more peer discussions and active learning. So that's a big major trend that we're seeing, in which there is a long-term impact, meaning that the ideas of transforming these spaces are going to take quite some time before we're no longer a main part of the conversation. Another major trend that we're seeing is the evolving nature of the scholarly record that's on our midterm, driving tech adoption in academic and research libraries over the next 3 to 5 years. Once limited to print journals and monographic series, scholarly communications now reside in networked environments and can be accessed through an expansive array of publishing platforms. As a result of this rise of digital content, there is a need for policies to guide libraries in the storage, publication, and dissemination of emerging formats. We point to the Online Computer Library Center, OCLC, as being instrumental in this process, publishing 2 reports in 2014 and 2015 that help provide conceptual frameworks and pose recommendations for developing effective stewardship models for this new type of research. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Sam. I'll go ahead and transition that for you, Sam.
Thanks so much. All right, so on the other side of the coin is the challenges. There's always obstacles that get in our way, but luckily the report is brimming with examples of libraries and organizations working to overcome those challenges quite successfully. So we look at challenges a little bit differently than we do trends in the technologies of a report. Rather than looking at them at a time-based scale, we look at them as scope of difficulty. How difficult are these challenges to solve? So on the lower end of the spectrum, we have solvable challenges. And these are challenges that we already know how to solve. In many instances, it might be that we just haven't managed yet to solve the challenges at scale, but we know what to do and solutions are underway. On the other end of the spectrum, we have wicked challenges. And those are challenges that are difficult to define, let alone solve. So a lot of people are struggling to find common language to even articulate these challenges. But once we're able to kind of have a common view of these challenges and look at them through a common lens, we're confident we can find approaches and solutions to them. So our expert panel identified 6 challenges along that spectrum this year. And one of them is in the difficult category, and that's rethinking the roles and skills of librarians. So what's necessary to be a successful practitioner or successful librarian or member of the library staff today? What sorts of skills are needed, especially amidst this rapidly evolving landscape of technology? We know patron expectations are also evolving. So what does it take to accommodate those needs and expectations? A lot of libraries and library programs are beginning to focus on teaching library professionals new skills related to emerging technology. So San Jose State University's graduate program for library information and information sciences, for an example, has a great course that teaches aspiring library professionals about integrating emerging technologies such as maker spaces and robotics into libraries. So we're beginning to see a shift in the types of tools that librarians and aspiring librarians are being equipped with. And so I think that's only going to grow in importance over time. And it's a difficult challenge, so there is definitely hope, especially as progressive libraries are implementing more professional development, making clearer policies and guides about what's expected as a librarian or staff member. And so more to come next year. And of course, we do look at our challenges under the same lens as trends: policy, leadership, and practice. That's the best way to frame the discussion. So we can look at advancements in visionary leadership, of course look at policy advancements, and great things that are being put into practice by creative librarians all over the world. Another major challenge or roadblock that the expert panel views this year, and brand new to the report this year, or any report that we've published for that matter, is managing knowledge obsolescence. And what that really means is, we know how hard it can be. It seems just as you've mastered one tool or technology, the new version launches. So what can be done to help library professionals and the audiences they serve stay more up to date on the latest tools and technologies and overarching strategies? Again, we're seeing advancements in different professional development opportunities, in training, and we're really starting to see a shift. This has especially been a challenge in the rural areas of India, where knowledge obsolescence is rampant among the information profession. So at the local Caliber 2015 conference, librarians there discussed the creation of a library and information science online course, an open online course, to provide a standard syllabus for librarianship and promote the use of new technologies, and even includes ongoing support through refresher courses. So we're starting to see different countries, regions, institutions across the world take note of this challenge and begin to try and tackle it. Next, on to the technologies.
All right, thanks, Sam. So for our technologies, we have our developments in technology over the next 1 year or less, 2 to 3 years, or 4 to 5 years. So I'm just going to pick two of the topics that we're going to kind of expand upon today in our presentation. One is of course makerspaces. This idea of redesigning the spaces, is something that is a big buzz. I know at the NMC Summer Conference we talked a lot about making and 3D printing and makerspaces, and I was caught in a lot of conversations about that. And I think libraries are thinking very much about how to think about reorganizing their space in this way. So the turn of the 21st century has really signaled a shift in the types of skill sets that have real applicable value in a rapidly advancing world. Creativity and invention become the hallmark of innovation on campuses across the globe, and many academic and research libraries have renovated or repurposed space to accommodate makerspaces. Ideate, Carnegie Mellon University's Integrative Design, Arts, and Technology Network, built an extensive collaborative makerspace facilities in the Hunt Library to support student projects, including a digital fabrication shop, a physical computing lab, and an interactive media black box. So those different examples of how that's playing out within museums. Looking a little further down the road, we have the semantic web and linked data. Advances in metadata standards and search engine analytics are connecting library catalog systems on the internet and using linked data to help users uncover and delve into content that may be hidden in the deep web. Developments in semantic web are generating new ways of data contextualization. The result is deeper personalization and more comprehensive views of bodies of research. Researchers at the Institute of the Study of the Ancient World developed a discipline-specific approach for linked data, which connects all artifacts relating to Roman numismatics, studies of coins, and can link multiple examples of given type of coinage from various contexts. So we're seeing a little bit of how these larger database collections can be can speak to each other and help within the research realm. At this point, I would like to turn it over to CEO of the NMC, Larry Johnson, to engage the rest of the co-principal investigators in a discussion about some of the themes that have emerged in this year's report. So Larry, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, and to you as well, Samantha. The Library Report has enjoyed unprecedented attention, and it has, I think, opened up a whole new category of ways of thinking about how technology is impacting campuses that frankly were brand new to us. And I want to credit my co-principal investigators. Let me introduce them to you. Lambert Heller from TIB Hanover in Germany, Andreas Kirstein from ETH-Bibliothek Zurich in Switzerland, Rudolf Mumenthaler from HCW Chur, also in Switzerland, and Franziska Regner, also from ETH-Bibliothek Zurich in Switzerland. All of you have been fantastic to work with. This is our second year of doing this, and we've had some fascinating discussions as we've gone through this. And so as we get into the discussions, I want to let the audience know that you're part of this dialogue as well. So we plan to not actually do any presentation for the rest of our time, but to engage in conversations. We're very interested in your comments. We're very interested in your questions. And I'm going to start off with a question to Rudy that piggybacks on what Alex was just talking about, which is the topic of makerspaces. And probably no topic has had more impact on the ways that libraries are reconceptualizing their mission. And some might even argue that this kind of activity is pretty far from the traditional mission of an academic or research library. But our expert panel put this right squarely in the immediate short-term horizon adoption, and we use 20% as that benchmark for when we see things entering the mainstream. So Rudy, do you see 20% of the academic and research libraries that you are aware of creating some sort of makerspace or thinking about it? And what are the benefits that are driving this interest?
So I didn't understand everything, but the end of the question about there are not yet 20% of libraries already engaged in makerspaces, especially not academic libraries. So the trend emerged some years ago already more in the public libraries section. So public libraries began to think of new ways how to deliver, how to provide knowledge to the users. And that's also where I see the connection to the traditional task of libraries, to provide information, and one step further is to provide knowledge. And knowledge is not only provided by talking and reading, but by doing things. So these are new concepts, also new didactical concepts that come now to the library scene. So it's also, we already know that this from Fab Labs. It's another way how these concepts are used in institutions.
And so, Lambert, what's the view over in Germany? How is our German institutions approaching the makerspaces?
Yes, I share pretty much the view that Rudy gave, because yes, it's kind of a new thing, and it feels like a stadium of experimentation, and we have now these large and pretty reading rooms. We have an audience with changing interests and so on, and now it begins a phase where one of the some few of the more experimental libraries start to try this out. But it is in Germany, like in Switzerland, I guess, it's only like a handful of libraries. But they are speaking out loud about their experiences in the social media, for instance. We had, to give just one example, at the last Bibliothekartag, that is a huge national library conference in Germany, a whole permanent session all about maker spaces, and the librarians were absolutely fascinated and tried everything and so on and so on. And I think we are only at the beginning of a larger development, maybe.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Did you want to jump in, Andreas?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, maybe I'm agree what said until now, but for me, it's another question also important. Is all the things that we do, all the things that librarians do and now propose to do, is it really constituent for a library? Is this a trend for longer term? Or I think many of the, I like many things that I saw in public libraries, for example, in the US, what they make the maker spaces and new tasks that they take over. But on the other hand, I ask myself, part of it is maybe also a kind of survival, trying to survival the job as a librarian. And I think this is a good idea to try it. I tried as by myself too. But is it really the future of academic and research library to provide these makerspaces? And in this point, I'm not so sure about.
That's one of the big challenges that was featured in the report, and I want to come back to that question. But I think what I'm going to do at this point is ask a question of Francesca, and maybe this is a good place to take a step back and reflect on the process behind the report itself. We use an expert-based Delphi process in the Horizon project to select the topics, and I think we would all agree that the process has some significant strengths, but it also has its shortcomings. I'm a statistician, and one of the strengths is that a sense of expert consensus, I think, lends weight to the topics and the reports, and people are very interested in knowing that people that understand and pay attention to these trends and technologies have thought deeply about them. But the Delphi method is one that's inherently biased, really, towards creating that kind of consensus. And so a downside, I think, is that, as Nicola Taleb described them, black swans, they're not really likely to surface. And so now, with 2 years of experience, Franziska, what insights might you have on the process itself? And then I think we might take that on around the group, but please start with you, Francesca.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, I can easily jump in here, I believe. Just as a remark, I have only been part of the project in this period of the NMC Horizon Report edition. So I am a quasi-new member of the co-principal investigators. It's the first time for me to use the Delphi method, and what I really like about it is that it allows for a very condensed and concentrated and also international discussion on topics. What was really helpful was that the NMC colleagues moderated the discussions and structured the discussions in a highly professional way. And I have hardly ever seen similarly international discussion on topics ever before. So that's a very clear advantage in my view. However, I agree to what you said about the so-called black swans. They are not likely to surface in such a process. And now I would like to address the readers. Readers, you may realize that there are some black swans if you go to the details and if you go to the project examples, and also if you well, read what is suggested in the literature recommendations. What I can also recommend is to have a look into the openly accessible wiki. In this wiki, you will see which topics were discussed in the expert panel that didn't make it to the final report, and that is worthwhile as well, in my view. The findings, to come to a conclusion, in my view, are not extraordinary, and that might be a critical view on it. However, there are some excellent examples and further suggestions as well. And finally, I would like to pay a compliment to NMC. What you do with great passion is acting as agents for passion, and I believe that everyone in the expert panel realized that that makes it worthwhile, and there was passion in the round of co-principal investigators and among the expert panel as well, I believe.
Thank you very much, Francesca. It is a process where I think everyone involved is really trying to think deeply about some of these topics, and I just want to note that some of the comments in the audience reflect that as well. And if there is a benefit that we could single out about this work, it's that it gives us a chance to maybe engage around some of these ideas. So, for example, Kate asked, is it a good question, to ask whether this is part of our mission or not? And, framing it in a way as it should, if it's just 3D printers, maybe not. But as Lindley notes, that, if it's bigger than that, if it's broader than that, then it starts to get quite a bit more exciting. And so I want to take it on actually to a bigger. I'm going to take it on even bigger, since we're talking about mission here, and in a very real sense, in terms of, and I'm going very big here, in terms of humanity and the absolute ability of humanity to continue to shape its world. And academic and research libraries have one of the most important jobs that I can possibly imagine, and as their role is continuously being questioned and pressure on budgets and all of that, the role of preserving and protecting and making accessible what is essentially the sum of human knowledge is what we're actually really talking about. And without the work of literally thousands of academic and research libraries around the world, our future would be pretty dark indeed, and you can look back in history and see several periods in time where that in fact has happened. Now at the same time, things are digital. I mean, we've gone digital, and whether by obsolescence, by lack of budget, to continue to store things, there's really a whole host of things that are putting a great deal of pressure on especially recent knowledge and putting it at risk. What kinds of roles are developing in academic and research libraries to address these tremendous challenges? And I'm going to ask Lambert, I'm going to ask you to take this question first. Let's talk about digital obsolescence.
Yes, thanks, Larry. And if there's some background noise here, please bear with me. In fact, I'm in the middle of the IFLA World Library Information Congress right now in Cape Town in South Africa, and so it's a bit buzzy around here. But okay, let's talk about this obsolescence. I mean, the funny thing about this is that on the surface, it's about that, for instance, the growing number of research papers every year, or you will find often statistics citing that there are so and so much petabytes that mankind altogether produces every year and so on. But if it would be only this like of quantitative, like a numbers measurable thing, then the problem would be not so complicated and so difficult, especially for libraries and researchers who are sitting there and trying to make use of the information. The complicated thing is that we have now multiple channels and platforms that can really be useful, and that you, as an active researcher in your respective field, might really want to use. For instance, we have now not only a closed peer review, but we have in many cases platforms that allow for open peer review, for commenting, even for articles that exist in several versions, yes, like in a wiki or something, and or on a software production platform. So to understand this growing and complicated information space is not that easy, yes. As librarians, we all remember, some of us remember maybe the 1990s, then it was really easy. It was like you had these research databases, and they were like islands. Yes, you had a few of them, and you only had to show the users how to make use of them and show them once. And okay, these are your information resources. Make use of it. That was all. And today we have like hundreds of possible tools, platforms, and channels. And what I would take out of this, and from my point of view, but maybe we can discuss about this, is that we cannot simply master this richness of channels and platforms and tell the users on simply how to use them, give them a simple recipe, but instead we have to start to cultivate ways of using these. By which I mean we have to get together with the researchers, try things out, and report each other our experiences and find the best ways to make use of them. Yes, maybe this idea. Yeah.
So, would one of the other panelists like to add to that?
I think at the end, when it's come about, there are many aspects of it, and one of the aspects is maybe about the preservation of all that stuff. And I think at the end, there is not a really solution for it, not in terms of human resources, not in terms of money. And at the end, I guess someone, I don't know, maybe it's my part today to be a little bit pessimistic. I'm sorry for that. At the end, someone has to decide what is worthwhile to prevent and what maybe not. And at the end, all these kind of decisions are always political decisions. My hope is that not every institution in the world of digital medias will go to the same decision. So maybe the different institutions worldwide will keep as much as possible prevented from the obsolescence at the end and keep away from the human history.
There's a question from Twitter that I'm going to just insert an answer because I know it. And the question is, where can I view the topics that didn't make the report? And the answer to that is on the project wiki. And if I could ask Alex or Samantha to just type that URL into the chat, that's available for anyone to view. The editing is only open to the expert panel, but all of the topics are there, and there are many that were discussed that, and all of the discussions of the expert panel are visible there, and you can review them at your leisure. So well, we got some other interesting sorts of questions here. I think it's safe to say that Google is probably the first stop for not just undergraduates, but probably anyone in university that's looking to write a paper on most any topic. And what does it mean for librarians when resources like Google are literally in the palm of your hand, and so many other avenues exist for students to discover source materials? Andreas, you want to speak to this?
Thank you. I think at the first hand it means that we have all interest to bring our materials into the Google. So the students and all the people around will find them. So we have to connect our library systems and our different divisions of our services to bring it in Google as possible. At the second hand, maybe we have to bring our know-how of digital literacy, not only to the undergraduates, but maybe even to the high school teachers. So, because nothing is more needed than critical thinking when it's come to checking sources if you use Google tools. It's a question about quality, and I think the learning to handle this should not start with the undergraduates. It should start just earlier in the school time. Maybe this could be a task also for librarians.
Rudy, we haven't heard much from you lately. Let me ask you, what do all of these resources mean for graduate and postgraduate study, and how can we be making those resources available to other scientists, other researchers?
What I thought were in different discussions now, it's for libraries very important also to cooperate. Like Andreas said, to cooperate with a partner like Google. So it could be a competitioner, but it can also be a partner. So we have to check out how we can bring our content to the user, and then when the first address is Google, then we should try to cooperate with them. That means also that we have to take care of interfaces, of using standards, of using new formats of metadata and of data also, and these are quite great challenges for libraries and also for us. So I'm not a practitioner in libraries, but I'm a teacher and researcher at the university, and we are responsible here for the education of future librarians in Switzerland. And for us, all these this knowledge, all these is important, and we already teach it to the students. So there's another challenge for us as a teacher.
Let me take our conversation sort of back to where we started a little bit, but in a larger way. We talked a little bit about big open reading areas, and how as the books have moved off-site to storage facilities, that the space is opened up in the library to be used for new kinds of things. What are some of the most interesting ways, Rudy, that you've seen libraries reconceptualizing the use of their space?
So I think very interesting is a concept of Danish library scientists. They created a concept of 4 spaces of the library. It was designed for public libraries, and we try now to adapt this concept also to academic libraries. So we have to consider that there are very different needs by the users, and these needs depend on the situation they are in at the moment, on their role, on their tasks they have. And we have to consider which of these functional needs require a functionality in the library as a space. So we have different spaces, and that refer to different needs of the students. That is one very interesting concept. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to add is it's also very interesting to use new methods of observation techniques in order to get to know what the users really do in the library. Sometimes librarians assume that they are doing what they should do in this room that is created for them, but in reality they behave differently. They do other other things, and it's very interesting for me as a researcher to get to know this.
Mm. And Francesca, what are you seeing in libraries?
Yeah, I would like to add what Rudy just said. I could provide an example here from ETH. We do not have a makerspace in the library, and I think that we do not need a makerspace in the library. However, we are using methods, and especially methods that are used at chairs here at the university. We have a pilot project in which we use the method of prototyping. And we intensively collaborated with the chair product development and engineering design here at ETH. And the idea is that the students themselves use the prototype, adjust the prototype, and comment on the prototype. So this is all very basic, and some of our colleagues considered it even to be a bit shabby, you know, not perfect style and design. But the students are quite fond of it, and in my view, we definitely need to open our understanding of library spaces and include external expertise, both from latest research, from architects, designers, other practitioners, and maybe even from philosophers. That's my view.
Wow, that's interesting. You know, I was recently in Sydney, and I had the opportunity to visit the brand new library at Macquarie University. And the first thing that you notice when you walk in the building is how noisy it is, which is a really different thing that you expect to see in a traditional library, which is a really quiet space and so people can read. And the reason why is because they built it around the notion of collaboration and having spaces where students could meet and work together. The walls themselves were all like whiteboards and wireless everywhere, lots of places to sit and meet and that kind of thing. It was a fascinating notion about how to think about using the space and the role of the library in all of that. Are you seeing that in Europe as well?
Yes, for instance, we have like more than 1,000 working places that are really used on a daily basis at the TIB in Hanover. And mostly these are students of the university in Hanover, for sure. But the interesting thing is then that when you have this room, this space, you can really use this luxury and offer different zones, yes, different kinds of spaces. And this is where a library, from my point of view, really becomes interesting. Because we have, on the one hand, for instance, because Larry mentioned that, rooms, closed rooms, where things can get really messy and loud and so on. And we equip these rooms, for instance, with these kinds of smart boards where you can draw and make and do with videos and interactive stuff and things like that. And on the other hand, we have smaller rooms where a single person can sit and work very quietly, but has, on the other hand, top-notch technology like a scanner, printer, and so on at hand. And last not least, this traditional reading room where it is quiet as well, and where you have this joy of sitting and quietly and learning, but being not alone, but amongst other students. So, and this is kind of, I mean, it's a classic. I have to admit it. It is not new, but I would insist that this will be important, and that what you have called a makerspace is merely an extension of that, because makerspaces, Kate in the comments pointed this really very validly out from my point of view. It's maybe, yeah, I'm not so happy with this term makerspace. I mean, it's room for discover of what you can do with information, and 3D printers may be a part of that, yes, but different modes of working quietly, working together, and so on, will be constantly important as well.
Yeah. Excellent comments. So we are rounding the corner towards the final turn in our conversation here, and I want to take a question from the audience. Actually several are coming in. The first from Ava Brillet. How are emerging teaching trends impacting trends in academic libraries? And Franziska, I think you might want to jump in on that.
Yes, sure. I see that this is a very relevant question, and for me it was quite helpful to read the latest edition of the NMC Horizon Report Higher Education. Many of the trends and the emerging teaching trends, how Ava puts it, are mentioned in that report. I believe that flipped classroom is one thing that is reflected by libraries as well, especially when it comes to teaching information literacy or what Andreas described as digital literacy in a broader sense. At some universities, and that is my understanding from discussions I have, libraries also get involved in the development of MOOCs or so-called talks which are restricted in their access. Questions such as long-time preservation of these MOOCs or talks could be addressed by libraries, and in that way they are involved in the new trends and teaching trends. Another thing is how to include the material that is in libraries, and especially the licensed material, into other formats. And these developments pose sincere questions to us as libraries and as information providers in a broader sense. So we have to keep ourselves up to date and get into strong collaboration and networking with other stakeholders at universities to adequately respond to these challenges.
That's fascinating, and it makes me think too about a conversation that we had as we were preparing for this session today, and several of you noted that while the expert panel placed the semantic web and linked data, which have a role in helping to make deep levels of information more available, several of you noted that there's considerable evidence that there's a lot of that already taking place, at least in the early stages. Rudy, what's the current state of the art for the semantic web and linked data?
So I was a little bit surprised because last time, I guess, in the report 2014, it wasn't even mentioned, and now it is a kind of a midterm trend, I guess, or yeah. I think it's already here. It's already here for some years, and the problem is, the technology is well known. But at the moment, we are still thinking of how it could be used really in libraries. So the added value of linked open data seems to not to be clear to many responsible people in libraries. So it's very difficult to understand how it could be used for the benefit of the users.
Yeah, I'm reminded of William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer, and he said in an interview that the thing you need to understand about the future is that it's unevenly distributed, and so there are pockets, I'm sure, where there's a tremendous amount of work going on this, and other places where maybe not. But Lambert, you rose your hand, and I think you have something to add here.
Yes, there's maybe one area that I'm especially fascinated by, and that we are working on at the TIB Open Science Lab, and that is research information systems based on linked data. Research information systems, I think many of the people who are watching now or discussing with us are aware of this trend, are things like Elsevier, Pure, or Thomson Reuters Converus, where you have these kind of scholarly profiles, where the institutions provide them with a personal page that automatically updates and gives some insights and statistics about what they are doing, and so on and so on and so on. And this is a very young and interesting and complex field, because we have, on the other hand, commercial players like ResearchGate or academia.edu who do more or less the same, but without the institutions. So you can sign up and bring up your own profile. And in this complex area, we have this new trend that we use linked data to do this. So as an institution, with using linked data, you can really make sure that the information about your researchers are, how should I say it, very well fit into the texture of the open web. Yes, that it is very easy to find then with search engines that different sources can be connected, and that you can even provide an application where you can have a look around in a research community of some research area with people from different institutions. Because this is the inherent problem with traditional approaches like Elsevier Pure or Thomson Reuters Converis. These are all very fine, but they are all for one respective institution. But the discovery of researchers and what they are doing normally happens not on an institutional level, but more likely on, let's say, the level of a research community that is into one common topic and spread across the world. Yes, and with linked data is really helpful here. Yes, it makes the content better discoverable and makes it easier to connect things between institutions. So in this area, it is really kind of helpful. Otherwise, I have to agree to what Rudy said. Yes, this is maybe a problem that we have this technology around for so long, and sometimes it feels like, okay, let's have a look. What can we do with it? We have some answer, but what was the question? Yes, but in the special case of research information systems, it makes sense, really.
Yeah, yeah. So I noted in the comments that someone made the point that there's some interesting things happening with machine learning that could maybe be the catalyst that helps this to take off. And the report itself takes a very optimistic view on machine learning and cites coming advances in library tools in particular that can pinpoint key themes and make observations and actually discover links in textual and other materials, and cites other examples that are drawn from projects like the Watson supercomputer. And so, Franziska, I'm gonna shoot this question to you. This is actually a controversial topic in the real world outside of academia, where people like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking have raised serious concerns about where artificial intelligence might take us, and many feel that a computer that actually could pass for human, pass the Turing test, is imminent. In fact, just a few months ago, the first one that made us all really think that it was really close took place in England. Franziska, where do you see this technology going, and do you share those concerns?
Well, first of all, I completely agree that this is a controversial topic, and we could probably discuss hours and hours about it and would not really find a solution. I believe that we need reflection on these topics, and that we need digital literacy, and also that we need human interaction. However, overall, I do not share a too pessimistic view on all these new opportunities. There are completely new ways of combining facts and information by artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I strongly believe that we need to increase our expertise and mental openness in that field and to see what opportunities there are. Anyway, there might be opportunities, for example, to rationalize some of our everyday tasks and use the resources for new fields of activities. Some of them are described in the report in the section new roles and tasks, I believe it is, for libraries. So we need a debate in our libraries and expertise. I would try not to be too pessimistic and too closed in a way, but to be open and use the opportunities, which makes a high level of knowledge and information literacy in the libraries necessary, of course.
Well, thank you. I hope that folks in the audience have gotten a sense now how rich this process has been for me, getting to work with these amazing folks on our panel, and I want to thank each of them. We're going to move to the closing hymn and go ahead and say goodbye here in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to give each of our panelists a chance to have a closing thought. And so we'll just we'll go right to left. So Rudy, you can be first, and if you'll just give us a closing thought, and we'll just go on down the panel.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you here and also in person already at conferences. I hope we can continue the work. For me, I think for me it's very important the topic, the role of librarians, and for me also as a teacher. So it's a big challenge to give the needed education, to give the knowledge and the skills to future librarians during education. That's I guess, one of the biggest thing we can do.
Yes, from my perspective, the working with students together with the University of Applied Science in Hanover and yeah, the information management students from there was maybe one of the most fascinating and interesting experiences I had since the last report. And I must say, yes, to make experiences together and try what one can do with new technology. This may sound obvious, but this is one of the most important things that we can do right now. And of course, yes, take the consequences out of our experiences and think about how we can further develop the services of our libraries.
Absolutely. Franziska?
Yes, I would like to give a statement addressing all the skeptics out there, because I know there are skeptics about the report and its results. My view is that this is part of a broader discussion and part of a whole landscape of interesting reports, statements, trend monitoring activities, and I believe that it's a very good sign that the community is engaged in this debate, and I'm quite looking forward also to face-to-face discussions on conferences and other platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And to you, Andreas.
Yeah, I think we ended the discussion about machine learning, and when I look around in the world, I would be happy before the machine starts learning, maybe the people will start learning, and I think there's a big task for librarians to help them with it. So in this sense, it was a great work to work on this report, and I'm very excited to hear all and to read about all the comments that will come with it, all the controversial discussions. I hope many comments will reach me, and I'm ready for discuss further. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank each of you and all of the expert panelists as part of the group, and to all of the NMC staff that were authors of the report, and to Sam and Alex in particular for hosting this session today. This second annual report, I think, has a really important role, and the NMC's commitment to looking at where technology is going for academic and research libraries is profound. We thought about how to do this for nearly 5 years before we launched the first report last year, and a big shout out to Rudy, who helped us put this effort together in the very first instance. And the first report revealed such a pent-up demand with downloads literally in the millions of downloads of that first report. It was just astounding. And it has given us the resolve to do as good a job as we possibly can. And I think that in an academic setting, that debate about these topics is healthy, and we have contributed. I was looking just to get the number right, 329 resources in the report, references of timely topics, timely reports, news articles, and other references, to document the conversations that are in there, and I hope that it adds to the debate. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alex. I want to thank all of you in the audience and all of our panelists, and back to you, Alex.
All right, thank you, Larry. So on behalf of the NMC, I want to thank our co-principal investigators for this illuminating discussion. And finally, if you want more information on anything you saw or heard today, let us know by contacting me directly at alex@nmc.org. To get involved with our community, please visit our website at nmc.org, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter at nmcorg. And with that, I want to thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.